The room is quiet, perhaps too quiet, and you're staring at the ceiling or the glowing screen of your phone, and there it is, that sinking, heavy sensation in the pit of your stomach. It is a physical weight, a tightening of the chest that comes with the sudden, lucid realization that you have made a terrible mistake. It might be the text message you sent in a moment of white-hot anger, the investment you poured your savings into despite the red flags, or the job offer you turned down because of a vague fear you couldn't articulate. We replay these moments in our minds like a corrupted film loop, rewinding to the split second before the decision was made, obsessively searching for the glitch in the system. We ask ourselves the same question over and over again with increasing desperation. Why did I do that? I am a smart person. I'm logical. I know better. So why, when it mattered most, did my brain betray me? To understand this betrayal, we have to peel back the layers of who you think you are. We like to imagine ourselves as the CEO of our own minds, sitting in a high-tech control room, analyzing data, weighing pros and cons, and executing rational choices with surgical precision. But the truth is far more unsettling and far more cinematic. The conscious you, the part of you that is listening to these words right now, is not the pilot. You are often just the passenger, strapped into a vehicle driven by an ancient, invisible navigator who's operating off a map drawn millions of years ago. This navigator doesn't care about your happiness, your financial portfolio, or your social reputation. It cares about one thing: survival. And in the modern world, that survival instinct is exactly what is driving you off the cliff. Consider the architecture of a regretful moment. Rarely do our worst decisions happen in a state of cool, detached calculation. They almost always happen in what psychologists call a hot state. Imagine your brain is a house. Upstairs in the attic lives the rational thinker. Slow, methodical, deliberate. This is the part of you that learns new languages and plans for retirement. But downstairs, in the dark, boiler-filled basement, lives the primal responder. This part of you is fast, emotional, and impulsive. When stress hits, when the pressure mounts or the adrenaline spikes, the stairs to the attic are blocked off. The lights go out upstairs. The basement takes over. You think you're reacting to an annoying email from your boss, but your basement brain perceives a predator in the brush. It floods your system with cortisol, shutting down your ability to see the future consequences, narrowing your vision to the immediate now. In that moment, you aren't making a decision. You are reacting to a phantom threat. And by the time the lights come back on upstairs, the damage is already done. But it goes deeper than just stress. There is a seductive, dangerous mechanism in your mind called the narrative fallacy, and it is responsible for some of the most catastrophic life choices humans make. We are storytelling creatures. We crave order and chaos. When we want something to be true, our brains will literally edit reality to fit the script we desire. Think about the last time you stayed in a bad situation far longer than you should have. A draining relationship, a dead-end career path, or a project that was clearly failing. Logic screamed at you to leave. The data was right there in front of your eyes. But you didn't leave. Why? Because of the sunk cost trap, which is really just a fear of rewriting your own story. To quit is to admit that the previous chapters were a waste. To quit is to mourn the time you lost. So instead of facing the pain of a small loss now, we choose the catastrophe of a total loss later. We double down. We convince ourselves that if we just push a little harder, the reality will bend to our will. We become the tragic hero in our own movie, refusing to read the writing on the wall until the roof collapses. This is where the concept of confirmation bias stops being a textbook term and becomes a weapon against your own happiness. Imagine you have made a questionable purchase, or perhaps you've started dating someone your friends warned you about. Your brain immediately enters defense mode. It stops acting like a judge searching for the truth and starts acting like a defense attorney, searching for an alibi. You will subconsciously ignore every red flag, every warning sign, and every piece of contradictory evidence. You will hyper-focus on the one tiny detail that supports your decision while filtering out the mountain of evidence that screams you are wrong. You aren't seeing the world as it is. You are seeing a mirror reflecting your own desperate need to be right. We do this because the ego is fragile. To admit a mistake is a form of psychological death, and the brain will perform incredible gymnastics to keep the ego alive, even if it means driving your actual life into the ground. Let's descend further into the shadows of decision fatigue, a phenomenon that silently erodes your willpower throughout the day without you ever noticing. Picture your willpower not as a character trait, but as a battery. Every single choice you make from the moment you wake up drains a tiny percentage of that battery. What to wear, what to eat, which route to drive, how to word that email, thousands of micro decisions. By the time evening comes, the battery is in the red. This is why you break your diet at 9 p.m., not 9 or a.m. This is why you doom scroll for hours at night instead of reading that book. This is why arguments with spouses usually happen after work. Your brain is exhausted. It literally loses the metabolic energy required to say no or to think complexly. In this state of depletion, your brain switches to the path of least resistance. It chooses the short-term dopamine hit over the long-term goal. It chooses the passive scrolling over the active creation. You aren't lazy, you are biologically over budget. There's also the haunting influence of the anticipation of regret. Often, our worst decisions aren't things we do, but the things we don't do. We stay in the safe harbor because the ocean looks terrifying. We optimize for the avoidance of pain rather than the pursuit of gain. Psychologically, the pain of losing $100 feels twice as intense as the joy of winning $100. This loss aversion keeps us paralyzed. We settle for the good enough life because the risk of failure feels unbearable. We create elaborate worst-case scenarios in our heads, catastrophic movies that haven't happened and likely never will. And we treat these fantasies as facts. We allow the ghost of a failure that hasn't occurred to dictate the reality of our present. We silence our intuition, that quiet, calm voice that knows what we truly need, and instead, we hand the microphone to our fear. But perhaps the most insidious trap of all is the illusion of the future self. When you make a decision that has consequences for the future, like saving money or exercising, you often don't view that future person as you. Neurologically, when you think about yourself in 10 years, your brain lights up in the same way it does when you think about a complete stranger. You treat your future self like a different person who will handle the mess you are making today. Future me will deal with the debt. Future me will have the energy to fix this relationship. It is a profound lack of empathy for your own existence across time. You burden this stranger with all the heavy lifting, assuming that magically they will be stronger, disciplined, and more capable than you are right now. But when the future arrives, you're still just you, with the same flaws and the same basement brain, only now you're carrying the weight of the past. It is crucial to understand that these aren't glitches, these are features. Your brain is a survival machine, not a truth-seeking machine. It is designed to keep you safe, part of the tribe, and energy efficient. It prioritizes immediate social acceptance over long-term integrity because, for a million years, being cast out of the tribe meant death. That is why you agree with the group even when you know they are wrong. That is why you stay silent when you should speak up. The social pain of rejection is processed in the same part of the brain as physical pain. To your ancient navigator, speaking a hard truth feels like touching a hot stove. So you pull your hand back, you make the safe choice, the cowardly choice, and you call it being polite or keeping the peace. But deep down, you know it is just fear wearing a mask. And this mask is heavy. It suffocates the authentic voice inside you, the one that knows what you truly want, until you can barely hear it whispering beneath the noise of conformity. But there is another layer to this trap, a chemical layer that binds you to your worst impulses with invisible chains. We live in an era of supernormal stimuli, a world engineered to hijack the very reward pathways that kept your ancestors alive. Your brain evolved to seek dopamine, the molecule of more, when it found scarce resources like sweet berries or signs of safety. Today, that ancient seeking mechanism is being bombarded by a fire hose of artificial triggers. The endless scroll of social media, the flashing lights of a gamble, the hyper-palatable sugar and processed food. These are not just distractions. They are precision-guided missiles aimed at your basement brain. This creates a state of perpetual wanting without liking. This is a crucial distinction that often leads to our deepest regrets. You might find yourself obsessively chasing something, a toxic relationship, a status symbol, a destructive habit, driven by a ferocious chemical hunger. You want it with every fiber of your being, but when you finally get it, you don't actually like it. The satisfaction is hollow, fleeting, or non-existent, yet the craving returns almost immediately. This is the dopamine loop. You are a rat in a cage pressing a lever not because the reward is good, but because the anticipation of the reward is agonizingly compelling. You make the decision to consume, to click, to text back, not because it brings joy, but to silence the chemical itching in your brain. You are chasing a ghost of satisfaction that disappears the moment you touch it. Then, inevitably, comes the failure. And with failure comes one of the most destructive psychological spirals known to the human mind, the what the hell effect. This is the perfectionist's curse. Imagine you have committed to a strict budget or a diet. You are disciplined for weeks. Then, in a moment of weakness, you slip. You spend too much on a dinner or you eat a slice of cake. A rational mind would say, that was a small error. I will get back on track immediately. But the perfectionist mind, the mind terrified of its own flaws, says, you ruined it. The streak is broken. The day is wasted. So, what the hell? And you proceed to spend hundreds more or eat the entire cake. You turn a minor stumble into a major catastrophe because your brain struggles to process the gray area. It wants to be perfect, or it wants to be nothing. This black and white thinking transforms a single bad decision into a cascade of self-destruction, all fueled by the shame of not being a robot. We must also confront the paralyzing weight of the paradox of choice. We assume that having more options equals more freedom and therefore better decisions. But the modern world has drowned us in options. Stand in the cereal aisle, or scroll through a streaming service, or swipe through a dating app. The sheer volume of possibilities creates anxiety, not liberation. When you finally pick a path, you're haunted by the ghosts of the paths you didn't take. You wonder if the other job was better, if the other partner was the soulmate, if the other investment was the winner. This counterfactual thinking steals the joy from the decision you actually made. You live in a state of permanent low-grade regret, constantly looking over your shoulder at the shadow life you aren't living rather than inhabiting the one you are. This dissatisfaction leads to impulsive pivots, where we abandon good things prematurely just to see if the grass is greener, only to find it is artificial turf. So how do we wake up? How do we reclaim the cockpit from the basement navigator? The answer is not to fight your biology, because you will lose. The answer is to introduce a pause, a gap, a sacred space between the stimulus and the response. In that split second when the anger flares, or the craving hits, or the fear gripes your throat, you have a choice. Not a choice of what to do, but a choice to simply notice. This is the practice of metacognition, thinking about your thinking. It is the ability to float above the scene of your own life and observe the basement brain throwing a tantrum without letting it grab the steering wheel. It is saying to yourself, I am feeling an intense urge to react right now. My heart is racing. My narrative is telling me I am in danger, but I am just sitting in a chair. By observing the sensation without acting on it, you rob it of its power. You turn the lights back on in the attic. You allow the slow, methodical, wise part of your brain to come online. This doesn't mean the emotion goes away. The fear might still be there. The anger might still burn. But you are no longer inside the fire. You are standing next to it. You can acknowledge the sunk cost without drowning in it. You can see the confirmation bias without being blinded by it. You can look at your future self with empathy, seeing them not as a stranger, but as a dear friend you are responsible for protecting. You realize that perfect is a myth, and that a stumbled step is still a step forward if you don't throw yourself down the rest of the stairs. The ultimate freedom comes when you realize that you are not your thoughts, and you are not your past decisions. You are the awareness that experiences them. Every moment is a reset point. The bad investment, the broken relationship, the wasted time, that is just data. It is the curriculum of your life. The shame you feel is useless weight. Drop it. The only decision that matters, the only one that has any power, is the one you are about to make right now. The past is a memory. The future is a fantasy. The present is the forge. As you step away from this screen and back into the chaos of the real world, the triggers will be waiting for you. The stress will return. The fatigue will set in. The siren song of the easy way out will call your name. But this time, when you feel that familiar pull, that tightening in the chest, that whisper to just give in, pause, breathe, let the wave crash over you without sweeping you away. Look at the decision not through the lens of immediate relief, but through the eyes of the person you want to become. It will be hard. It will be uncomfortable. But in that brief, silent pause lies your freedom. That is where the script changes. That is where the passenger becomes the pilot. And that is where your real story begins.